Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is tincture, and there's 4 definitions. Well, 4.5. A solution of a medical substance in an alcoholic solvent, a characteristic quality, cast, a slight admixture, trace, color, tint, or a heraldic metal, metal, color or fur. So, there's a whole bunch of different directions to go with this, and I decided I sort of had a little bit of all of them, except for the first one. The first one is very specific and sort of takes on a bunch of the others, but here's what I went with. I'm just gonna start reading. I also wrote that the origin is tincture, and it's Latin verb tincere, meaning to moisten or dip. So we might get back to that. I didn't in my notes, but we might get back to it. So there are sometimes that I'm in the mood to explore the word and its interactions that it could have in a game. See yesterday's episode on anthropomorphic for that, where I went into how that is just the setup and phases and structure of the game more than anything else. But other days I feel like just diving into a design. I worked on a design for a little bit of the day on Sunday and a bit of Saturday, and made some really good progress, and it's the first time in a couple weeks that I've been on that side of it, instead of, developing or working on, setting up proofs and things like that. So I've been in this design mood, so I sort of started this with a design approach. And something about it just hit the spot for me, so I just dove right into it. Color or tint makes me think of a cards with numbers, cards with colors game. Especially one that I've made, 7 sevens, which is just 7 different colors and 7 different numbers and 7 different famous sevens. So, and that one was actually made from pitch tag, which is a very similar process to this, where you just come up with a game based off of a sentence or a phrase or a couple words. But this made me think of colors with numbers and just a card game. Let's say that the colors represent the changing of a shield or an emblem. And I wanted to go co-op on this because in most cases a card game about, with cards with numbers game is not a co-op. It's usually competitive, and the changing of the shield, changing of the whoever's holding a location in like a war style game or anything like that, to me, we could all be working together. That just seemed fitting. So, of course, I went medieval with the game you play as medieval band of fighters trying to take over a territory that was once yours. And I wrote, this is the opposition. It's been taken over by the Tincture. And then I heard name will change, but I just couldn't come up with the name. It's been taken over by an opposing force, and you want to take it back. They made their mark, and they left their emblem on a map. And cards with numbers game probably doesn't have a map, but you might have something like a card in play that just shows up. The emblem is a combo of colors. So I imagined maybe like a grid on the table, and I don't know how big, but let's just say like a 5x5 grid of just cards that are out, and they're all just different colors, but that represents their emblem. In order to invade and reclaim your territory, you need to sneak in and slowly bring things back to the way they were before, which I don't know if is possible, or at least you just need to change the color from what theirs is to what yours is going to be. But you have to do it one tint at a time. So imagine that the map in the center of the table is made up of cards, colors, and numbers. Color is the emblem. Number is the amount of soldiers or infantry that there are there. So you need to play 2 cards from your hand when you are an active player going in for this strike, which is just going to be one of many things that you can do. If it's the entire game, it's very one note. I like to just start with something and then kind of build on top of it. That's been my approach lately. Is sometimes you'll be like, well, that's the game. You play cards and you try to get over them and you defeat them, and defeating them is 100% everything you need to do. So you get points for that, and points is how you win the game. But I like to think of these little nuggets as part of the bigger thing, because it needs to be meaningful in the end run. And that's been my approach to design, is just if this, if it doesn't stand on its own, it can be a part of the greater thing. So you're going to play 2 cards from your hand to try to adjust the territory. One is the soldier amount, so your cards are the same as theirs that are down, and they just have a number on them. Another one has the color on them. So the one is the soldier amount that's needed to claim a territory. They must be higher, it could be equal or higher to the number on the territory. And then players must discard cards until that number is hit. I think it needs to be higher. I'm just going with this. You need to discard cards until that number's hit. So let's say there's a 4 out on a territory that you want to take over. For whatever reason that one speaks to you, there needs to be some sort of reason in the game. I'm gonna play my 4, and then I'm also going to play, I didn't write it down, my second card is the color that I'm changing the tint to on that specific territory. So I play those 2 cards. I haven't played any infantry units or anything like that yet. So what it is I play the number. So let's say you have a 3 out and a shade of dark red. I play my 3, or I play my 4, it's higher. And then going around the table, each player must play a card of a tint that is either hold on, I'm just going to read it. Then players must discard cards until that number is hit. Once cards are discarded, any player or the active player will place a new shade on the map, 1 shade lighter or darker. So you're changing that shade, that emblem card 1 shade at a time. All players will play cards on their turn. The rub will be that if it makes it around without completing, so let's say we can't play a card enough to fulfill our higher count than what was on the opposition's card, then the active player must discard a card of the next shade. So let's say it was dark red and I was going a little lighter red, and they'd probably have some sort of number coding on them, so you know which one's actually one step lighter. They have to discard a card of that shade. So before I go in for my approach, I might want to have more than 1 card of the next shade. And it could be either lighter or darker, so you can go in either direction. But I would have to discard that if my communication with my teammates wasn't well, and I didn't know that they had the cards to discard, and there should be some parameters on which they're discarding. Because if you could discard anything, we'll never get to this penalty. But we get around. If it's successful, I throw my card of a new shade down. But that defense mechanic for the players to play against is, if I can't play it, if we can't do it, then I got to throw a card of a different shade of that 1 shade off down, and now that area is slightly harder to go back to, because I need to have either another card of that shade or somebody else has to. And I even thought maybe each player's discarding cards of a shade lighter or a shade darker, or there's something completely different that gives it a whole other angle, where the cards must meet a different criteria that we can try to build up to and trade and try to obtain cards. There's a whole bunch of balanced stuff with something like that with multiple players. If we're playing 2 players or if we're playing 6 players, it's a different dynamic. You just need to have a whole different hand size and a different number values for the players. But that's as far as I got. And the one thing I never got back to was the origin was to moisten or dip. And I like the word dip as like an action word. So like dipping a card, it's interesting is because you normally dip, like if you dip in paint, it's going to change it. So that could be like an action term for physically changing that color and changing the tint, but it could also be an action word for how you trade cards out. You're going to dip it into a whole new paint, and maybe it gains attributes of both. For example, when you mix colors, I mix two colors, and then it could be like thinking of like a deck builder where there's all cards laid out on the side, and then if I dip this card into one of yours or one of my neighbors, both those cards are gone, but we've gained this new one that's the combined color. Color combining is a little, not quite mathy isn't the word, but technical, and could just become a whole bunch of spreadsheets and not super fun. But other ways you could dip is just you combine two cards, or I play a card onto one of yours, and then it just makes something new. I don't know. I like that origin, and then mixing a couple of the different definitions together, and I sort of took that heraldic metal, color, or fur as the theme of this game. So there's Tincture. I went different than recent and just went full on into just what would this be if I was making a game, and sometimes it's fun to do that. This one sort of hit for that. So thanks for listening. If Tincture inspires anything, please share and let me know. On YouTube, iTunes, there's not really a lot of communication back and forth, but Twitter, Facebook, wherever, just share it. It's awesome. It's cool to hear it. All right, thanks. We'll see you tomorrow.